I would take this privilege now to invite His Excellency Mr. Jose Ramos Horta, Honorable President of the Democratic Republic of Timor-Leste. We would like to hear from him his voice of wisdom. Excellency.
You speak from here, or if you want, you can go here. Both options are there.
Thank you.
Excellency Minister, Excellencies, thank you for the privilege given to me to share with you some reflections on my own country and maybe region and the world, where we are, where we might be going. But before doing that, I first want to say again how privileged I have been to come to Bangladesh at this time. This is my third visit. I first came soon after I left office the first time, 2007, 2012. Then I was invited to speak at the commencement at the EULAB, and of course visit Professor Yunus, whom I have known for a long time, more than 2 decades, and it was my first concern soon after independence of Timor-Leste, in view of the absence of economy. Nothing was circulating, no money circulating. There are few currencies circulate, whether Indonesian rupiah, Australian dollar, so we didn't have yet a currency. That was in 2000. And I had read about the Grameen Bank, about Professor Muhammad Yunus, and I thought I would invite him to come to Timor-Leste. And Lamia Morshed, who is here, thank you for coming, you came, I think, in 2000, before independence, yeah. And that was the beginning of our relationship with microcredit. I had read enough about it to venture into creating my own microcredit, which, as in the end, it turned out to be a disaster. and some money from my Nobel Peace Prize, some money people gave me, with a Timor NGO called Timor Aid, the people I knew. I asked them, can you create a microcredit? I give you the money. They say, yes, we can. So we start. Anyway, to make the story short, I didn't want my name in it, and the compromise was JRH, Microcredit for the Poor. And 5 years later, more or less, they came to see me. They say more than 70% non-repayment. I took it casually, and then what? What's the problem? Well, we are now left with $40,000 in the bank. What shall we do? I said, well, you keep the money to cover your costs, expenses, we close business. More or less, this is how it happened. And in the meantime, Lamia had been to Timor, had helped setting up a microcredit organization called Maurice Rassic, living on your own or your own means. And that slowly spread around the country. And then Professor Yunus came to Timor-Leste first time in 2004. I was foreign minister, speaking at the Hotel Timor at the end of a couple of days of forum with NGOs, I announced I will nominate Professor Yunus for the Nobel Peace Prize. I'm sure he had been nominated many times, like Jimmy Carter had been nominated at least 10, 20 times, like President Kim Dae-jung, South Korea, had been nominated. I became an expert in understanding the workings of the Nobel Committee. And some people totally misunderstand, and they waste so much time collecting signatures. I remember in one of the times I was in Oslo, before getting the Nobel Peace Prize. It never occurred to me, I didn't care. I wanted the Nobel Peace Prize for our church in Timor, and it never occurred to me. But I remember reading in the media one Swiss priest, or one Swiss gentleman, he had collected 1 million signatures to nominate Bishop of Chiapas, Mexico, because back then, Mexico, that area was very much in the international media, and nominating Comandante Marcos, his name, Bishop of Chiapas, and then other nominated Commandant for the Nobel Peace Prize. I thought, well, what a waste of time. The only advantage of that, yes, you collect 1 million signatures, 1 million people got to know about your cause. But by then I understood. And so I decided to nominate, and why would Professor Yunus, an economist and setting up microcredit, running the Grameen Bank, would win the Nobel Peace Prize? Why not the economics prize, which is in Stockholm, not in Oslo, not the Peace Prize? And so that was my first argument in my verbal. And the Nobel Committee members, they never invite any nominator for conversation. They never do that. Obvious reason, you would have thousands of people flock into Oslo doing lobby, as if you do lobby in the U.S. Congress, for instance. But my explanation was not because of the simplistic argument by some, because in '91, following the Twin Tower World Trade Center terrorist attack, there was this simplistic argument that it is poverty that breeds terrorism. And I was invited to sit at a forum in Waldorf Astoria. The World Economic Forum that year had this 2002 decided to do a World Economic Forum in New York, in Manhattan, in tribute, solidarity with New York. And at the same podium, there was President Shimon Peres of Israel, Bill Gates, Jim Wolfenson from World Bank, and myself. I don't remember any other. There was a gentleman from Council of Foreign Relations. And Shimon Peres was the one saying, the poverty breeds terrorism. And I countered that. I said, no, that's, I think would be an insult to poor people. You would have terrorists all over Africa, all over much of Asia. No. Terrorism is an ideology, is politics. Yes, sometimes it grows out of disfranchisement, and out of alienation, out of anger, desperation, ignorant, manipulated by those who promise heaven, etc., etc. But elimination of poverty, yes, contribute to a much more peaceful, tranquil environment in a society, in a country. So that's my argument. And grabbing back Professor Muhammad Yunus' contribution, first, regardless of the debate about the causes, consequence of poverty, gave hope, better life to millions of people. No Nobel laureate, no academic is so well known, respected, esteemed in the world as Muhammad Yunus. When he first arrived in Delhi, of course, that was before the Nobel Peace Prize, I went to the airport, and there he arrived in the typical, very humble fashion. I think wearing sandals, not that French brand, I forgot the name of that brand, I would add, what a greater luck, greater fortunate, how fortunate Bangladeshi youth. The Bangladeshi youth of the current revolution remind me a bit of Che Guevara and Fidel Castro. But Fidel Castro and Che Guevara, they stormed their way into Havana from Sierra Maestra with guerrilla fighters. These ones, unarmed, more the style of Mahatma Gandhi, and a very unique style, because even Mandela, they must celebrate Mandela, whom I had the privilege to meet, led an armed struggle. And he argued, he defended for a long time. And only Mahatma Gandhi till the very end proposed non-violence. And the youth brought about this end of a particular regime. Themselves, youth, without any violence. Of course, violence happened, but not as a strategy, as a policy. And then who they choose to lead? Well, you couldn't have a better person than Professor Yunus. So then you have such a great condition for a successful revolution. Revolution in the context of changes, not the negative connotation that when you hear about revolution in this, successful revolutions all had a leader. The successes had leader. You cannot do changes in a school, at home, in a village without a leader or leaders. Leaders with vision, leaders with ability to articulate, to share the vision, the ideas, the promise with the people, and they embrace your vision because it meets their anxieties, their expectations, their desires. And leaders that have compassion. Leaders have to be brilliant. You have to study. Well, either self-educated or study, and study, and study. Understand everything that related to the society. But at the same time, you have to have the ability to communicate. If you do not communicate, people, yes, might read through books, but that's less effective. But leader that through his or her life, her work, show how committed he or she is to the society, to improve the lives of the people. Well, that's Muhammad Yunus done all his life. To lift from poverty, from desperation, millions of people, and not only in Bangladesh, all over the world. It's amazing how impactful has been the work of Grameen Bank, the work of Muhammad Yunus. So that's a privilege to come to Bangladesh, a country that produced two of the best NGOs that I know of. I tell you, ladies and gentlemen, I know all the NGOs in the world, good and bad. And because of my work, my lobby for the several decades, I got to know foundations, NGOs, churches, everyone. And two that the most effective that I met through my lifetime is all in Bangladesh. The other one is Grameen Bank and BRACS, Bangladesh Relief Committee, I think the name. And I visit them also. So this country has produced some of the best people, the best ideas, best institutions for change. So for that, I thank. Timor-Leste, where we are today, 22 years after independence. When we started independence in 2002, we had literally zero money. Our annual budget at the time was $68 million. $68 million. And really no economy, no investment, so very poor. We had 20 medical doctors. We had one PhD. Electricity was very precarious only in parts of the city. Today we have and we had one university with 10,000 students. Today we have 18 universities or institutes of higher learning, together 40,000 active students. We have more than 100 PhDs. The PhDs are from different countries of the world because until only 3, 4, 5 years ago, our university didn't have PhD programs, even master's programs, few of them. So now we have more than several hundred PhDs. We had 20 doctors. Today we have 1,300 medical doctors. And electricity covers 97% of the country or more. 96.1% was 2021 data. So 2024, that I say probably 98% of the country. Hardly any road. Today we have national roads in most of the country. Still parts that don't. Parts going to the villages with no seal roads. To 2025, we are going to invest more in rural roads, in water and sanitation. 2002, life expectancy of Timor-Leste was less than 60. Today, about 70, 71 years. Economically, today we have one of the lowest debt in the world. Our debt is only 13% of GDP. And none to commercial banks, only to ADB, to World Bank and IFC. And the debt is because we want to, because we have our investment in we create a petroleum fund, our sovereign fund, with the first oil and gas revenues in 2005, we created a sovereign fund. Initially, all the investments, all the return from the oil and gas went to U.S., invested in U.S. Treasury bonds. We diversified starting 2009. Today is 40% of several $7 billion invested in equities, in the equity market, and in euro-issued bonds, developed market bonds. We are looking now to diversify, invest in developing market economies. particularly in Asia. That has been at least my argument. We, the fund managers who chose to invest in developed market bonds, I totally disagree. I told them it would be more profitable to invest in nursing homes in Europe than investing in a European developed market. We have the strongest possible relationship with Indonesia, our neighbors. From day one, the real leader of the country is not the person sitting here, because I was the whole time, 75, I was in New York and around the world advocating. It is a gentleman called Xanana Guzman. You might have read, you might have heard, super charismatic individual. 17 years in armed struggle, in political struggle, underground struggle, 8 years in prison in Indonesia. And in prison, he turned the prison into a forum. and all the prisoners loved him, Indonesian prisoners. And the prison became also a place of communication. He was able to communicate from prison. He had laptop, he had mobile phone, and then he had some prison guards working for him. Once I asked him, I sent him money from abroad. I said, listen, my friends don't ask me for where I spend the money, but could you send me a letter, a simple letter, say that you got the money? So I tell them. And so one day, a few months later, he sent me a very comprehensive report, handwritten. And I noticed in the report, there was an item, salaries for 12 prison guards. So he was paying $50 for every prison guard, the 12 $50 salary. And to make the story short, then one day I heard Mandela was going to Indonesia. I immediately decided I had to see Mandela. So with some friends in ANC, I went to South Africa. Well, typical of ANC those days, I arrived there, nothing had been organized, absolutely nothing. I went to the ANC headquarters. They, last minute, herded some ANC women, activists, some young men coming to see me. You know, they had not organized anything, so last minute they called all these people coming to see me. I said, with due respect, I came to see Mandela, not you people. And they are so embarrassed. They said, he's too busy, too busy. I said, that's okay, I have plenty of time, I wait. They start getting impatient because I wouldn't want to leave the country. Then I met a young South African called Robert McBride. He had escaped death sentence, execution, by chance. Mandela was released, ordered his release. He is released right away. He was one of the masterminders of one of the biggest attack on the South African Air Force Club. He was captured, sentenced to death, waiting execution. Mandela is released. I don't remember how I met him. We became friends. And he was one of Mandela's favorite person. So he told Mandela that about me, that this Ramos Horta, he said, he's not leaving until he sees you. And at the time, I was not known. And 10 days later, a phone call came to Robert McBride's home, 2 hours away from Johannesburg. Comrade President, ready to see Mr. Ramos Horta. So we rushed to Johannesburg, right to the house where Mandela was staying, to the first floor, and I was guided to his bedroom. Arriving there, Mandela was on the bed, awake, looking at me, smiling broadly. He said, you were the one who said you would not leave until you see me. I said, yes, that's me, and I apologize for that. And he said, I apologize for making you wait. I just came out of hospital today. He was actually the whole time in hospital on a knee surgery, which he acquired a problem in Robben Island. But I didn't want you to wait any longer, so that's why I'm receiving you in my bedroom. We spent 1 hour chatting, and I just told him, please, Comrade President, I know you're going to Indonesia. Ask to see our leader. He's in prison. To make the story short, sometime later he did go. Then he returned. I got a message. I was somewhere in Europe to go to a fixed line. The president wanted to talk with you. So I went, the phone rang. I picked up the phone. I thought it would be the secretary of Mandela. It was Mandela himself. He said, I met your leader. Great man. I'm very impressed. When can you come to South Africa? I said, Comrade President, whenever you tell me, I'll come. Tonight, he said. I said, President, I don't have any money, I don't have the ticket. I have to find the money and the ticket. He said, just go to the airport, the ticket is there waiting for you. So I went, and Mandela told me about his meet with Miss Shanana. How? He told Suharto he wanted to visit Mandela, visit Shanana, and Suharto ordered that Mr. Shanana be brought out of prison, Sipinang, to Istana Merdeka, to the presidential guest house, to meet with Mandela. And both had dinner. So that's how Mandela told me, and Mr. Shanana confirmed. So that is how Shanana, he's the leader, and he's the one who led our reconciliation with his extraordinary authority, moral authority, his wisdom. Day one of independence, he said, we move forward. No revenge, no prosecutorial justice. Reconciliation among the Timorese family, because the violence was not only us and the Indonesian army, us among us and the Indonesian army, not the Indonesian people. Never once in our literature, publications ever demonized the Indonesians as a people. Never once our rebels touched a single Indonesian civilian. Not a single Indonesian military captured was killed. They were treated after a few weeks, few months, put on the road to walk back to their base. Few months ago, when Secretary General Antonio Guterres visited Timor-Leste, I have a TV show, my own, called President Orta Show. So I invite Ms. Shanana and Antonio Guterres for a conversation. And Ms. Shanana, in the context of the struggle, he said, I myself took care of the wounds of several Indonesian soldiers who were captured. So we never demonize Muslims. Timor-Leste, 99.6% Catholic. Well, one can easily, demonize the people, generalize. Not once we demoralize. So that one, it was easier when independence came, no hatred, and easy for Shanana to say reconciliation. So no, we rejected international tribunals. I even had arguments with the late Kofi Annan and Sergio Vieira de Mello. The UN created a hybrid international tribunal, not the UN administration on the ground. And I told them, I'm sorry, you don't have the authority to do it. We are going to ignore it. You are bypassing the Security Council. Only the Security Council can create. You are the administering authority of a non-self-governing territory. So how can you create something like that? And they were embarrassed. So it did issue indictments and so on, but We order our prosecutor general, our police, Interpol to forget about it. So that's what facilitates the. So my point is, in our country, for peace to prevail, we had to understand our own history and have the courage, the heart, the wisdom to let it go. We honor our dead, honor our martyrs, we look after the survivors, we honor the dead, but we ourselves, we take care of the survivors. Even during World War II, we were invaded by Japan. Tens of South Timorese died. We are probably the only country in Asia that didn't demand compensation from Japan. I don't know of others, but I know of many demanded compensation. Indonesia did, Philippines, Timor is the only one didn't demand compensation. Now, a few reflections on there has been much talk about the reform of the UN Security Council. Every time there is a major upsurge or failure, the conversation comes back. In 2005, I spoke at the General Assembly. I was Foreign Minister. Kofi Annan had floated the idea of Security Council reform, and there was plenty of discussion in 2005. And I reassured the audience when I spoke that Timor-Leste was not interested in being elected to permanent membership. And because the Italians, foreign minister at the time with sense of humor, he was referring to Germany because Germany was one of the European countries wanting the permanent membership. To Germany, Brazil, India, 4 countries, and Japan, the so-called G4 that want to campaign together. And the Italians said, those who talk about reform Security Council, they themselves want to be there. So I said, but let me reassure you, I'm not talking because of that. And under the current 2-year rotation, Timor-Leste probably will be eligible only 2040 something. And I said, I thank everybody, so many who have already expressed support for Timor candidacy in 2044. I made it up. But I do not think that expanding the numbers of permanent membership, non-permanent membership correspond to the current demographics, obviously, of the world. But doesn't mean necessarily that it's more representative, but doesn't mean it will be more democratic and it will be more successful. That I have an article, an essay coming out in the next few months with my own ideas about how that the UN, the collective, the global security arrangement could be more effective in preventing conflicts like Ukraine. Many of us knew it was going to happen. It just waited for a tough leader in Russia to emerge and will take action to redress what they saw as the post-Cold War encroachment on their security area. To make it simple, that it would happen. Gaza, it was there, and anyone who follow it know it is going to happen. It would happen. People misread the Palestinian resistance, and the Palestinians were seeing the two-state solution fading away. A lot of talk of Saudi Arabia would be the great prize for the normalization relation with Israel. So Gaza happened. Why it happened? why Ukraine happened and why Myanmar happened. The coup in 2021 happened. Everybody knew something will happen. So we talk a lot about conflict prevention, but every time we fail. I was in January in Rome, met with His Holiness Papa Francisco for 45 minutes, and I devoted at least 20 minutes of my concern about Myanmar. The tragic fate of the Rohingya people. It has been described in the media as the most forgotten people in the world. And with Bangladesh shouldering the burden quite conveniently for the rest of the international community. And as long as the Rohingya and the ethnic nationalities are not taken into account in the larger rearrangement of the constitution and politics in Myanmar, this problem will continue. So the so-called, and where was preventive conflict? So I told it all in the book, at least on Myanmar, we have a last chance to prevent the conflict from spiral out of control. How to do it? Well, first we continue to respect ASEAN centrality. But the reality is Russia is one of the direct partners of the military. Russia is the one providing the hardware to the Tatmadaw to enable it to continue the war. But I believe that it is time for a dialogue without preconditions. And the Pope would be the great person or his envoy to facilitate such an arrangement. An encounter, a meeting of all parties in the conflict in Myanmar, no preconditions, to find a way out for Myanmar. Because that pertains directly to Bangladesh, pertains directly to Thailand, to Malaysia, the rest of ASEAN. It shows again how we fail time and again on conflict prevention, and yet we talk all the time. And ironically, of the 5 permanent members of Security Council, 4 at least are directly or indirectly implicated in all of these conflicts, in Ukraine, in Gaza, and elsewhere. And I'm not making any judgment about how, why they should be implicated. I'm just saying they are implicated. Many years ago, in my previous function, I was Special Representative of Secretary General in West Africa. I was invited to go to Geneva for sharing a platform with former President Martti Ahtisaari of Finland, with Nobel Peace Prize. And there were 700 people in the audience in Palais des Nations. And the question was asked of me, but people stopped asking Ahtisaari any question, because he's more diplomat than me, diplomatic, so I kept avoiding the question. And as you know, the Nordics are not very excitable or exciting people. And it takes a lot to excite some Nordic person, and particularly Ahtisaari. So people start getting a bit bored with him, and most questions were addressed to me. Maybe they thought I was less experienced and I talked more openly. And I was asked about Syria. One question from the audience, and I said, I'm not going to give you a politically correct answer. Let me tell you the following. This war will continue for the next 5, 10 years. More than 1 million people will die before it ends. I gave an example of the war Iran-Iraq. It went on for 8 years, biological, chemical weapons were used. More than a million people died. But in Iran, Iraq was easier to end the war. There were two strong men leading these two wars, Khomeini in Iran and Saddam Hussein in Iraq. There were no fragmentation of power in either Iran or Iraq. When the two sides were exhausted, and I said, when the sides were exhausted, they will call for peace. Syria, much more difficult, more than 100 armed groups, and so many extra powers involved. So it's still going on, and probably will get worse, with further aggravating polarization of the relationship among the Security Council members, particularly P5. That I said in 2013 in Geneva in regard to a question on Syria. With Professor Muhammad Yunus, he and I, with many other more than 100 personalities, we spoke out, we did petitions. I hand over petition directly to President Widodo of Indonesia in his capacity as chair of G20, appeal to him, please be the voice of the debtor countries. One would assume that the industrialized countries, the G7 countries, in the face of COVID pandemic and the setback on the progress of the previous 20, 30 years of poverty alleviation in many countries, with the paralyzation of shipping, of international trade, that they would have the wisdom, if not the compassion, to take initiative, write off the debt of the more impoverished countries, indebted countries, to give them a chance. This did not happen. But when the first financial crisis happened in Europe, starting in Washington, subprime, in 98, 99, destroy the economies of Portugal, Ireland, Greece, etc. Hundreds of billions of dollars were quickly found to rescue Deutsche Bank, French banks, British banks that were exposed in the crisis. And yet, to write off the debt of South Asian countries, Africa, Latin America, not a gesture has been made. How can this country recover after COVID? And then before we recover from COVID, we have a Ukraine war that overnight caused a spike of commodity prices. In my own country, a bag of rice, 25 kilos, pre-Ukraine war was costing $11 for 25 kilos. And I know the price of it because I go and buy it myself. I drive my Jeep Willys, 1948. I go to the shops. I put them in the back of my Jeep, plus Super Me, the Indonesian Super Me, while I drive up the villages to deliver to some families I know. So I know the price of all of it. From one day to the next, as soon as the Ukraine war happened, the bag of rice went to $11, jumped to $18, $19, $20, $21. And this was all over the world. Again, there was no thinking of writing off the debt. Even for their own people. You know, when the subprime happened in the US, millions of Americans saw their houses repossessed by the banks. And yet they imposed austerity measures, two draconian austerity measures on the Greeks, on the Portuguese, so much that it shocked even the IMF. And these were policies of Germany and the European Central Bank. Let alone, are they going to be sensitive to third world countries? So I hope that with Professor Muhammad Yunus, with the new Bangladesh emerging. I know it will take time for reforms to take place, to consolidate. That with President Lula of Brazil, the new president in Indonesia, and others, we may impress upon the G7, G20 to do a new so-called Marshall Plan. I use the word only because it's easier, that would address some key challenges in the developing countries, namely write off the debt, with some conditionalities maybe for some countries, and focus on environment, on green economy, focus on tree planting, clean water for every village, every town, and renewable energy, education. So a Marshall Plan is very focused, no more than 5 priorities, is specifically designed for countries in South Asia, parts of Africa, parts of Latin America, and so on. That, yes, would create a world situation that would be more ethical for everybody. That, yes, you probably would reduce tensions in society, create peace. Peace doesn't come about by speeches. I have given talks ad nauseum for 30, 40 years. We have a summit of Nobel laureates regularly. And have we contributed to changing the world situation? No. Either we've been sending the wrong message, or no one really listened, or we speak only to the converted, not to the powers that be. The good thing is, when you look at the behavior of governments in regards to Gaza, just look at the way in regard to Gaza. Tens of thousands of innocent people have lost their lives. Children, women, elderly. Their possessions destroyed. Universities, hospitals, urban areas, totally bulldozed, like Dresden during World War II. How many tons of weapons or bombs were dropped on Gaza as compared to bombs that were dropped in the entire theater of war in Europe during the whole World War II? The data shows. And yet, every effort is made in the West to explain away the behavior of Israel. But at least you see in the streets of Europe, United States, the people speak a different language. What is the most noble about it coming out is the young people in Europe, across the board in the US, they are different from the political elites. Maybe with that, yes, there is hope that we can engineer a new global order that cannot be the assumption is to create a rival body to G7. If we create a body that is a rival to another one, there has to be a meeting of minds of all emerging global powers, whether in Asia, with those in Europe, in North America, to redesign a new order. And that is possible. We've seen through history how miracles were made after a war. And Professor Muhammad Yunus together with many others, we can do that. We have to do that. So this is my remarks. Sorry, I haven't written a formal speech to share with you. I didn't have the chance or the time, but I'm very happy to answer any questions, further comment if you wish. Thank you.